and the cessation of economic activity. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres paid tribute to the 188 staff, including 135 men and women who lost their lives last year in line of duty and who worked for UNRWA in Gaza, the highest number of UN staff ever killed in a single conflict or natural disaster. The Western Sahara file, the Spanish political party Sumar has submitted a bill to ban subsidies and political contracts to companies operating in the occupied zones of Western Sahara and Palestine. Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Silmani. The Minister of Industry and Pharmaceutical Production, Ali Aoun, has taken part in an Algerian-Russian working session on the sidelines of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, during which he highlighted the incentives offered by Algeria to national and foreign investors to carry out their projects in all industrial sectors. Mr. Aoun's participation in this international economic event in the company of the president of the Algerian Economic Renewal Council, Kamal Mullah, an Algerian businessman, aims to take stock of all the agreements signed between the two countries following the visit of the president of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, to Russia last year, and to strengthen the partnership and cooperation between Algeria and Russia. A number of presentations were made at the bilateral working session with the Minister of Industry, seizing the opportunity to highlight the place of the industrial sector in the structure of the national economy. Now, the Minister of Finance, Aziz Faïd, has met with the administrator representing the constituency to which Algeria belongs within the International Monetary Fund, Bahadur Bijani, with whom he highlighted Algeria's resounding commitment to the reform program aimed at consolidating its economic performance. Majid Mila has the details in this report.
A communiqué issued by the Ministry of Finance indicated that on this occasion, Aziz Faïd underlined the strong Algerian economy backed by industrial activity and investment in the agricultural sector, whose expected results are promising, while affirming to the IMF representative Algeria's commitment to the ambitious reform program aimed at consolidating economic results for sustainable and inclusive development. During the meeting, the Minister of Finance presented the performance of the macroeconomic framework, which remains stable, and the positive growth projections in line with the IMF forecasts. This performance translates into falling inflation and a positive current account. Detailing the reforms implemented by Algeria in recent years, Mr. Faïd noted that it concerns the review of the budgetary framework, the digitization of the financial administration, the diversification of the economy, as well as the implementation of initiatives aimed at improving the business conditions and encouraging entrepreneurship, like the reform of land for industrial use and the facilitation of public procurement procedures. The minister assured that the reforms will be followed by other important measures, such as the enactment of the law on public-private partnership, highlighting the efforts made by Algeria in diversifying its economy. For his part, Bahadur Bijani hailed Algeria's efforts to lay the foundations of a strong economic growth, whose results are confirmed by the IMF.
The chairman of the National Authority for Personal Data Protection, Samir Bourahil, has presented in Istanbul, Turkey, Algeria's experience in promoting rights, public freedoms, and the protection of individual privacy, particularly personal data. Speaking at a meeting of the heads of the personal data protection authorities of the member countries of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Samir Bourahil said that Algeria has strengthened its legislative arsenal to enshrine the right to privacy, pointing out that the constitutional amendment of 2020, notably Article 47, enshrined the protection of the processing of personal data as a fundamental right, the violation of which is punishable by law. As you followed in our top stories, Algeria has called in Geneva, Switzerland, on the International Labour Organization to speed up the implementation of emergency programs to help workers in the Gaza Strip who are facing a tragic situation due to the loss of their jobs and the cessation of economic activity. Speaking at the 112th session of the International Labour Conference, the Minister of Labour, Faisal Ben Taleb, welcomed the report by the International Labour Organization Director General, in which he described the tragic socio-economic and humanitarian situation prevailing in the Gaza Strip and the occupied territories due to the persistence of the barbaric practices of the Zionist occupier against the Palestinian people. Algeria is aware of the difficulties encountered by the International Labour Office team in drawing up this report due to the restrictions imposed by the occupier on international bodies operating in the occupied territories, noted Faisal Ben Taleb, underlining Algeria's solidarity and total support for the International Labour Office. On this occasion, the minister reaffirmed Algeria's unchanging position with regard to the Palestinian cause and its condemnation of the barbaric practices of the Zionist entity against the Palestinian people.
The continuation of the barbaric Zionist aggressions in the Gaza Strip and the crimes it commits against civilians, such as massacres, famine, displacement and destruction of basic infrastructure, which reached its peak with the invasion of the Rafah area, in addition to the restrictions it imposes on the entry of humanitarian aid, led to the worsening of the humanitarian situation due to the spread of poverty, famine and disease, especially in the Gaza Strip. Faced with this catastrophic situation, Algeria strongly condemns these practices committed by the Zionist entity against the Palestinian people, which does not respect the decisions of the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court and the successive resolutions of the United Nations. The Palestinian workers and their families live in a catastrophic situation due to the loss of job opportunities, the increase of unemployment rate, the collapse of the labor market, in addition to the fact that the occupier deprives the Palestinian workers of their rights in a blatant violation of all the main labor conventions.
Mr. Ben Taleb has held talks in Geneva with the Palestinian Minister of Labour, Ines Attari, on ways of strengthening cooperation between the two countries in various fields of common interest. This meeting took place on the sidelines of Mr. Ben Taleb's participation in the proceedings of the International Labour Conference in the presence of the Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Algeria to the United Nations Office in Geneva and international organizations in Switzerland, Rashid Bledhan, and delegations from both countries. The Al-Aqsa Mu'taz Hospital in central Gaza has announced that one of its electrical generators has broken down due to the fuel exhaustion resulting from the Zionist closure of the Rafah crossing. It is the only hospital still operating in the center of the war-stricken enclave. Said Bouazi has more.
The hospital warned in a statement that the malfunction of the generators constitutes a humanitarian disaster that could cost the lives of dozens of wounded patients and seriously ill children in the intensive care units and those who depend on electricity-powered respirators. The hospital has been running on just 2 generators for 244 days without interruption. This has put one of the generators out of action. The other one needs regular maintenance and alternatives to ensure its continued operation. The Zionist occupation is preventing the supply of spare parts for these generators, notably filters. The hospital appealed to the international community, the UN and international organizations, as well as to all Arab and Muslim countries to save the lives of Gaza's patients, wounded and children from imminent death by urgently restoring electricity to the hospital before it is too late. It also called on the World Health Organization and all international organizations to examine the dangerous conditions in which the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital finds itself, given that it is the only hospital still in operation. The establishment condemned the attempts by the Zionist occupation to storm the hospital and put it out of action, which constitutes, according to the same source, a crime against humanity and international law.
UN Secretary Antonio Guterres paid tribute to the 188 UN staff who lost their lives last year in the line of duty. Amongst those were 135 men and women who worked for UNRWA in Gaza, the highest number of UN staff ever killed in a single conflict or natural disaster. In his speech, he said the following.
That is by far the highest number of our personnel killed in a single conflict or natural disaster since the creation of the United Nations, a reality we can never accept. Some were killed with their families by bombardment of their homes. Others were at work in UNRWA, both in offices and shelters. And I repeat my call for a full accountability for each and every one of these deaths. We owe this to their family members and friends, to their colleagues, and to the world. Our UNRWA personnel lived and died as representatives of the international community in Gaza, and that community deserves an explanation.
Mr. Guterres has condemned a deadly Zionist strike on a school belonging to the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees UNRWA in Gaza as yet another terrifying example of the price paid by civilians. His spokesman, Stefan Dujarric, told the press that this is another terrifying example of the price paid by civilians, Palestinian women and children who are just trying to survive, forced to move in a kind of circle of death across Gaza to try to find shelter. Mr. Dujarric said that UNRWA's Commissioner General Filippo Lazzarini reacted to the attack, saying that UN staff and premises must be protected at all times.
Filippo Lazzarini, the Commissioner General of UNRWA, said that an UNRWA shelter was attacked today in Nuseirat, in the middle area of Gaza. It was hit overnight by Israeli forces without prior warning to the displaced people or to the UNRWA staff in the building. At least 35 people were killed and many more injured, he said. The school was sheltering some 6,000 men, women, and children who were displaced. The Commissioner General added that attacking, targeting, or using United Nations buildings for military purposes are blatant and disregard international humanitarian law. UN staff, UN premises, and UN operations must be protected at all times.
That was UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric. A new wave of demolition has hit the Palestinian villages of Masafer Yatta for several weeks now, a Palestinian Solidarity Association reported. According to the association France-Palestine Solidarité, these violations are committed either by Zionist soldiers or by settlers. Some are even carried out jointly. The association said that on the 4th and 5th of June, the villages of Masafer Yatta were the victims of a vast demolition campaign launched by the Zionist army, with the aim target being the hamlet of El Jawaya. 3 people were shot dead yesterday in Palestine during a Zionist raid in Jenin in the north of the occupied West Bank. And now to the Western Sahara file. The Association for the Monitoring of Resources and Protection of the Environment in Western Sahara has warned that off the coast of Western Sahara, Morocco has overfished and authorized overfishing to the point where certain species, notably octopus, are in danger of extinction. The association said the situation is likely to become even more dangerous in the years to come unless the international community intervenes to impose a biological rest period and strict controls on the overfishing of Sahrawi fishery resources. Said Bouhazi reports.
Located in Western Saharan waters, octopus resources are a major political and economic issue in this Moroccan-occupied territory. The fishing, processing and export of octopus bearing the Morocco label are in reality of totally Sahrawi origin. They have been harvested in total illegality in violation of international law governing non-self-governing territories, including Western Sahara, which was included on the UN list in 1963. In 1962, the UN General Assembly enshrined the rights of peoples to use and dispose of the natural resources of their territories for their development and well-being. Jurisprudence later confirmed the inalienable rights of the peoples of non-self-governing territories over their natural resources, as well as their right to be and to remain masters of the future development of these resources. Under international law, all states are under an obligation not to recognize any legal situation resulting from annexation. They are also under an obligation not to render aid or assistance in maintaining that illegal situation. However, Morocco continues to occupy, colonize and exploit the natural resources of the Sahrawi territory with the support of the European Union.
Still with the Western Sahara file, the Spanish political party Sumar has submitted a bill to ban subsidies and public contracts to companies operating in the occupied zones of Western Sahara and Palestine. Through this bill, Sumar processes to prevent companies operating in these areas, for example, from taking part in public tenders or from receiving subsidies from the public administration, as well as sanctions under anti-smuggling legislation. The initiative, as the political party explains, seeks to follow the path of the recognition of the State of Palestine by Madrid and aims to ensure that companies do not take part in violations of international law and that they benefit from public money. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Stay tuned.
The international event of the week.
Hello there and welcome on the waves of Radio Algeria International. We are honored today to have in our studio Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Norway to Algiers, Ms. Teresa Loken Gaziel. Your Excellency, welcome on Radio Algeria International.
Thank you so much.
So, having you with us is a great opportunity to go back on Norway's